Can I just try this microphone? Is that good? Okay. So the reason why we've got the door open is we're still missing one prize winner, cum reader. So we're hoping that she'll rush in anytime soon. Welcome in the name of the Guernsey Literary Festival and the Poems on the Move. We've had a bumper crop of poems this year. Kate Clancy, you will hear later in the comments in the film, being astounded by the number of poems and by the quality. She saw about 10%, 200 of them, but we have an excellent filter judge, Candy Neubert, who also works with the Britport Prize, who reads the full 2,000 plus and does the same for the Britport as well. Her newest volume of poems, very slim and very nice, is for sale back there in case you should be interested. So we have a wonderful variety of poems, and we also have a long-yeared sponsor by now. The post office has been faithful on our path together for quite a number of years, and we are incredibly grateful. May I introduce the CEO of the Guernsey Post Office, Bowley Smiley.
Thanks, everyone. I don't know, it's a good afternoon or good evening. It's in between, but hello, everyone, and it's nice to see you. And as Livia said, we very much enjoy playing a little part in the Guernsey Literary Festival. It's becoming even bigger every single year, and this event in particular, we have a strong affinity to, having sponsored it for the last few years. So onwards and upwards, I hope, in that regard. We like to do it because it's of such great benefit to the community, and again this year in particular has been a particularly difficult year, which you may or may not have heard about in terms of everything that's gone on. I'm sure you have. I think, in that regard, it would be remiss of me not to congratulate all the organisers of the Literary Festival for the amazing work they've done, particularly this year. I mean, every time they run this event, it goes from strength to strength. But this year in particular, everything you see before you, and indeed in terms of the wider programme, has been a considerable effort given the challenges we've had. And I guess on the subject of those challenges, we always look to try and take some positives out of them. And I think the last year has been a good year for the arts, in as much as many people have turned to creative writing and other forms of art, and we've seen a lot of that in our own little way in terms of post, as our posties have gone about doing their business. They've had their days cheered up by little messages that have been left and poems on front doors, particularly during lockdowns here, which has been fantastic. So very grateful for that. Again, Livia has mentioned 2,000 entries this year, which is absolutely incredible, and I'm so sorry. It's a record, yeah. And I'm so glad I have absolutely nothing to do with the judging, because I don't know how on earth they've managed to narrow that down. We've got, of course, as Livia's mentioned, an award-winning writer and poet in Kate Clancy, who's managed to do that and pick those winners. So we're very grateful to her. And on that note, I will zip up and let you hear what you really come to hear, which is all the great poems. Thank you very much.
We'll vary the running order a little bit at this point and play the tape now and hope that our missing prize winner finds her way to us after the tape. Thank you.
I'm Ros Woolner, and this is Pruning the Laurel. 3 points of contact with the tree, the way my mother taught me. 2 feet, 1 hand, one free to hold the saw. A smell of bay leaves now, pale sawdust on my clothes like flour, the thump as each branch hits the ground. I'm high enough to see across 5 gardens, wheelbarrows and washing lines, a football goal, a Wendy house. My neighbour steps outside. "Where's hubby then?" he asks, his meaning clear. Things must look different from down there. I guess I seem quite small to him, my saw no bigger than a bread knife. "Not sure," I say, my eyes on what I'm doing, one hand on the saw, 3 points of contact. "What did you want him for?"
My name's Katrina Campbell, and this is my poem, Black. The pattern round the hole in the window pane looks like a snowflake cut from cellophane. Snow scar or scatter from a 9mm bore. I stay back in case more fall. The marks on your left rib have faded to a net of pale red ink. A finely needled claret hidden under your chest hair. Even so, I can't forget the flake that settled there.
I'm Ros Woolner, and this is The Last Changing Room. No mirror, just a bin for skirt and top, knickers, bra, shoes, socks, and on a hook one garment, a coat of moss. Its emerald tufts are springy to the touch. You slip your arms inside the sleeves, feel the cool earth lining on shoulders, hips, thighs, the backs of your knees. When you walk out, barefoot, stomach still bulging with bulbs under your green pelt, the birds carry on singing, and you carry on too, down the road and up into the hills where there's bracken, wild ponies, a stream, and rain. Yes, rain.
Hi, my name's Camille Breward and this is my poem, She's Not Out of the Woods Yet. She's not out of the woods yet, and there's no map for this, and the compass is spinning and she's feverish and forgetful and can't find her way. Reluctant adventurer, my grandmother sets out, empty basket in frail hand, red cardigan tattered and frayed, walking into a fairy tale. My grandfather calls sometimes through a rusty tin can phone, discarded by kids in capes on the needle-lined forest floor. It's rare to hear just his voice, alone.
This poem is called Where Are Your Architecture Critics Now? At midnight, I am a resident of myself, soft and yellow as the butter I craved for 5 years and fearing collapse into my own foundations. My wife keeps the island wrapped round her, singing as she sleeps. On a nearby latitude, a bunker has been built. Viewed south, you call it gratitude. Viewed north, you call it guilt. If only. Up on the hill, away from home's carrion, I bite the useless blade of my pencil. A decade of keeping the perfect doll's house for this. If I could laugh, I'd call it modern, but the concrete fills my mouth like a brace. The question bites my dreams again and again. Bullets spat from the gun-hard face of a commandant I have never seen. I shan't go back to bed.
From ridge to ridge is a 4-year-old's stride, from furrow to furrow the same. She weaves the warp and weft of beach, sand hops, counts 1, 2, 3, 4, then turns towards the setting sun, 5, 6, 7, 8. Her rainbow boots reflect retreating streams which thread past sculptured ripples on the strand. She sews sea fabric, tacks and hems her world, while overhead a seagull imitates by stitching clouds, crisscrossing mackerel skies, swoops and soars, embroiders wisps of dusk, flies landward, silhouetted to its roost, looks out, then up, then out to sea and sleep.
Hi, I'm Emily Hunt, and this is my poem School Bus. For a moment I'm inscribed, reflected, my face a canvas of copper, russet, a ripening landscape. Spun gold stitches defining my features, hair woven into hedgerow and copse, gorse plumes and hilltops, an ivy-eyed blink as twigs etch icily upon grimy glass. I'm aground in a sea of burgundy, mustard, navy, of overpacked rucksacks, ringtones, lip gloss, mobile phones, as the bus's kaleidoscope heart splutters to life, as we lurch away, as I watch myself go.
Armin's Vessel, Sonnet to Surrender. I want to write poems and recite them to my ceiling fan. If you won't listen, maybe you'll take your place and say je t'aime to this ink like waves on paper hidden. I want to lie naked and surrender to the ashes on my skin, the smoke in my eyes. Hurry now, we've got dinner for two, waiting in the big beautiful sky. Let's eat in the nude on a shooting star. Maybe catch a movie, cheesy rom-com we can laugh about as we drive our car, fast to feel the sand blow out of my palm. The waves in outer space roll forever. Sit with me. One day they'll wash us over.
Hi, my name is Robert Ebnerstedt, and this is my poem, Modern Foreign Language. I can speak a foreign language, yet I can't say how I truly feel. I can prepare an advanced titration, yet I can't prepare a meal. I can work out any maths problem, but not how to be happy. I know exactly how a baby grows, but can't change my cousin's nappy. Can adults read the future? They often tell me what lies in store if I put my head down, do my work, and write till my hands sore. This generation listens, lesson after lesson. We learn everything you tell us. You don't tell us about depression. You don't tell us how to spend our money, but that we'll have none if we fail. I know a balanced diet, but not what a balanced lifestyle should entail. You tell us about exams, that they're the point of no return. You teach us about the environment, whilst the world you gave us burns.
Hello, my name's Kate Clancy and I was the judge for this year's Guernsey International Poetry Competition. I'm a writer, but I'm also a teacher, and what I especially do is teach poetry, so I do read a lot of beginning poems by people who are not necessarily published poets yet. And it's coming from that place that I would just like to say how incredibly high the standard of the poems that I had to judge this year was. I got this huge bundle of poems in the post. And, you know, usually when you have a huge bundle, you think that you're going to be able to move through them very competently and very quickly pick out the very few which are good. And that simply wasn't the case. I mean, normally you'd have an initial read through and then there'll be a small pile of yeses and a large heaps of no's. But when I went through the Guernsey lot this time, I really had many more yeses than no's. And I think what I was noticing was that there must be an awful lot of people out there who clearly reading a lot, who have been on long apprenticeships, who have been perhaps on writing courses. But not only that, not only was the surface of the poems, incredibly well finished, beautifully presented. People who clearly knew how to break a line, how to present a poem. But there was deep feeling and wide reading, all present in poem after poem. So that was great for British poetry, but it was quite tough winnowing for me. And I had to read through my piles at least 3 more times. And each time I had to make my criteria tougher. So I was looking for not just a good poem, but a deeply ambitious poem. Not just a good poem, but one that only used fresh new language all the way through. Not just a good poem, but a completely original one, until I managed to get my heaps down a bit. So if you're looking at this judge's report thinking, what happened to my poem? It wasn't that it wasn't read. It wasn't that it wasn't read with appreciation. It's just that possibly it got outmaneuvered by a poem that was slightly sharper or brighter in one of those reasons, one of those criteria. But one of the great things about my enormous pile of yeses, which I still had after 3 winnowings, was that at least I had several prizes to give. So there was a special category for Guernsey residents, and there was definitely a special flavour to those Guernsey poems that I had. They're very fresh, nature-themed poems, and I was very pleased that I was able to reward a poem that I especially liked, one about a grandmother with dementia, and give it a prize that I wouldn't necessarily have been able to otherwise with all the overwhelming number of yeses I had. And then we had another great idea this year, which is a poem for a bus. And I love that idea because competitions very often reward longer poems. You know, people with great big heaps like me, you can come down on saying, oh, well, I'll go for a very long poem because that's definitely good. It's definitely weighty. If you're looking for something on a bus, you have to be looking for something that's shorter and brighter, that's going to shine out when you're on the move. And young people's, so it was great to be able to choose just some really imagistic, almost surreal poems to fit that category, and I love our entries for that. And then there was young people's poetry, which is developing a hugely strong profile across the UK right now. And there was an immense and wildly diverse pile of entries to look through. And I'm very proud of the variety I managed to choose, because there was comedy and tragedy and protest, and then actually a very elegant formed, sophisticated poem as well, all in the final top 3 in the young people's. So I managed to reward a Guernsey resident. I managed to pick out several poems which I thought would be fantastic on the bus, and I managed to reward young people's poems, and that took my piles down a little bit, but it still left me with a huge problem of a large number of poems that I really would have loved to have rewarded. I just had 3 prizes to give at the end, and I could easily have given 20. So if you are still listening here and listening for the bit that says about what happened to your poem, maybe it was in that top 20. It's quite likely. In the end, when you're looking at those 20 poems that could all win, you're looking almost for your things that appeal to you personally. And personally, I like form to be present, referred to, a thing that people know about, but understated. So there was, in the one poem, had a kind of underlying sonnet, and that appealed to me. I like wit to be in a poem, and I like social observation, but I also like to be moved. I like to have some deep, strong emotion which pulls me in. And there was wonderfully raw, present emotion in that runner-up poem, Flack. But most of all, I like to read something that I've never read before, something truly unexpected. And I'd never read a poem about feminism and hedge trimming. And in the end, that created our winner. And I hope you all read that poem because it's great. So if you are still listening and you still haven't found out what's happened to your poem, I'm really glad you entered this poetry competition, because poetry competitions have a function which is that they get you to finish things. And I know that your poem was worth finishing, and it was worth putting it in the post. And that's a really important thing that a poetry competition can do. The bad thing that poetry competitions can do is leave people like you feeling that they weren't read. I do promise, if you entered this year, I do promise that you were read. You were read several times you were heard, you were thought about. And if you weren't in the yes heap, that's only because the piles were so full of so much excellence. If you weren't in the last few winners, it's only because the standard was so great. Please carry on writing your poems. Please carry on finishing your poems, and offer them to the competition next year. And maybe next time it will be you. Thank you so much for entering and for listening.
One really important sponsor that I forgot to mention, which really has been with us since before the literary festival even started, is Guernsey Arts. They began this whole project in a group that has evolved over the years, I believe in 2008. So we've been going a good long time. The wonderful thing about having different judges every year is that, as Kate Clancy describes, it comes down after you make judgments of excellence for a very, very long time. You've still got a big pile. And then it comes down to personal taste. So each judge has a completely different perception and choice. And the really nice thing that happened this year in the two Channel Island poets, well, there are actually three, but two winning ones that I hear, they're both completely unknown to me and quite a discovery. So can I ask Camille Brewer to come up and receive her prize?
Congratulations. Well done.
Yeah. And also Poppy Bristow. Yeah. And our youngest one, Jordan Gu. Just this. Slightly smaller style, but I expect you'll work your way up in the competition. So without much delay, let's dive into all the other poems that Kate Clancy picked. You know, of course, that she'll have a live stream talk right here, right after. So if you're intrigued by what she has to say and by her choices, come listen to her. Right. We call our competition the Guernsey International Poetry Competition. Some years it's always certainly the case in the submissions, but some years it's a little bit more sparse, the international aspect, in the actual people who win. But the poem that I'm going to read first is from a gentleman from Greece. His name is Vasiliki Albedo, and his poem is called After 3 Years. After 3 years, you wake me up, ringing me early in the morning. How are you? I missed you. I hang up, open the blinds to find worms creeping all over the cat food. I want to tell you I'm married now, though I'm not. I want to vacuum the worms up, but I don't. I call you back and ask what you've been doing, tell you I'm seeing someone, nothing serious. Take the broom and dustpan, open the window to lay the animals on the glossy, overgrown grass.
This poem is called Roz. It's by Caroline Bromley. Roz. You were always fashionably late. The light felt differently then. The leaves outside trembled. The house was coffee-scented. The clock cleared its throat. Sometimes, crossing the hall, I think of the way everything fluttered when I opened the door to you, like hens fussing to settle again on warm brown eggs.
This is also a poem by Carol Bromley from York, and this one's called The Fishmonger. The Fishmonger. How he used to horrify me, decapitating fish with a chopper. Afterwards, the heads would stare and gape at the witnesses who queued with worn purses for sprats and sole and fin and haddock, slapped in a scale, wrapped in newsprint, slid stinking, obscene into shoppers. The blood surprised me, soaking the sawdust, and the way the fishmonger flirted, wiping on filthy trousers his reeking, slimy hands.
This is a poem by Christina Buckton from Cambridge, and it's entitled, It Seems Like Yesterday. She liked to play with boys. She knew where she was with their roughness. Horses, dogs, boys, smelling of bracken and new bread. Tony Worcester burned her initials in a leaf with his magnifying glass, catching and holding the sun. The sun blinded her, splintered him in dazzlement. His house seemed to be without adults. Nobody stopped them sliding down the stairs on bolsters or chewing hunks of bread. Her teeth left prints in the marge, left prints on his cheek. They lowered their heads, cracked their skulls together like stags, and now she wonders if he married someone sensible.
This is Have-Nots. I have not laid wasted on a nightclub floor. I have not laid waste to a hypercalorific burrito. I have not laid down my life in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I have not gone laid. What a waste. I have not laid wasting a whole day in bed. I have not laid a pet fish to rest, condemned it to waste. I have not laid it bare for a loved one wasting away. I fear to lay down and to waste it all.
Hi, this poem is by Jo Haslam from Huddersfield, and it's called 20 Moons. We all said the same thing. Bad news. Her best friend who can't believe she won't just walk through the door. And those of us who thought she still breathed, who thought she almost stirred. But that was just a gust of air through the open window, lifting the checkered scarf around her neck, her dark red hair. I noticed how the heavy velvet curtain moved. And still we can't believe the sea sound of her womb is hushed. Her flamy hair won't reignite. How could its 100,000 fires be doused? And those hands, their 54 small separate bones reduced to ashy dust? Or any night swallow up their 20 moons, when no dark is a dark enough?
The next poem is by Stephen Keeler from Ullapool, but it's a poem about China. Unsung. 4 decades since I lived in the Far East, where yellow dust blew in each night from off the Gobi, and my students wrapped themselves in cotton rags and carried tiny stools to class and sat like circus elephants, practicing their tricks, memorizing English. the way some nations make the decision to rearm. Beyond the city walls, on gentle slopes, the modest cherry trees began to swell like baking loaves. And after every day of rain in spring, she said the temperature rises 1 degree. A kind deceit I chose to believe forever.
And this is a poem by Shirley Nicholson from Manchester. It's called Suddenly. When the train jerks to a halt in November gloom, a young man surprises the silence with a voice that flows the way cream pours from a jug. And passengers stop looking at what they cannot see outside, and voices fold into voices as football fans, shoppers, tourists, children, sitting, standing, become an upsurge of song, and no one can stop themselves joining in as the tune is lobbed from seat to seat, over tables, between people, across the aisle, and the sound pushes at the windows, bounces off the ceiling, throws itself through any chink, into the fog, the morning.
This is Mackerel by Judy O'Kane from Northern Ireland. We chop and sway with the waves, slip the knife along the spine, throw the remains over our shoulders like salt. We sit, silent, the terrier snug on your lap, staring out to the horizon. Take the wheel, you say. I'll open the window so you can see where you're going.
This is True Love, Bilstein by Steve Pottinger. You notice the girl at the chippy is different, stands somehow taller. The weekly swelling on her face is gone. The green of her gaze is electric. As the bruises on her arm fade, she blossoms into defiance, ink, and shovels scraps into your tray like a woman firing dirt into a freshly dug grave.
This is a poem called Start at the Start by Owen Rees from Manchester. Start at the start with late kids running over and the crowd cheering. The place cold frost and your breath giving out steam. The manager, the brains behind the product making important decisions. The coaches giving advice and motivating. The referee making occasional wrong decisions. The team talk cold, weary, only coaches speak. The first player is the fly half, the point machine, the kicker, one of the leaders. The scrum half, scared of tackles distributing. The smallest. The fullback, agile, fast, calling marks, the stamina of a horse. The wingers, wiry, stealing tries, faster than the wind. The physio, with his magic spray saying, "Carry on, you can run it off." The bench, the magic finishers, ready to go for the win. The crowd with one tall guy obstructing everybody's view. End at the end, where you have won, happiness around.
This is 2000 by Mark Totterdell of Exeter. 20 years on, they could still smell the cheese, the cable car into the pale-horned mountains, the trek over rocks to a roadless village, the baseless rumours of maggots and manure, the unmodern woman who would only sell them a lump of it, like a keystone which oozed in its bag, had to be dangled from hotel windows, the grottos of blue mould concealed within it, the acid tang of it, the crumble, the long finish of flavour in the throat, their mild unease at memories of the lows, the lows of cattle from windowless old barns in wide green valleys.
Such a wonderful variety of different voices, different moments, memories of song in Manchester or cheese in the Alpines. It's just mackerel being taken to bits and other fish slaughtered. It's just amazing. If you'd thank you for coming and listening and keeping faith with us for such a long time, even in such a very strange year. I think the fact that we've had so many entries has something to do with the strangeness of the time. Because if you look at every single poem, you can recognize that this is a wonderful and very shaped expression of something that your mind has been doing too. A wonderful memory, or a fabulous exotic place a long time ago. All the things, all the places that your mind goes when actually you're locked down in your house and you're going absolutely nowhere except in between your two ears. And that's what we get when the mind speaks to everybody else. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. The books, Kate Clancy's books, and only Candy Neubert's book, but Kate Clancy is speaking afterwards, so... Okay, right. Hope to see you all next year, whether as submitting or listening again. Thank you.